In a broken city on a faraway alien planet, there lived a little girl named Lyra. She was small, thin, and covered in dust from head to toe. Every day, she walked through the streets filled with trash and smoke, searching for anything she could sell for a few coins. But Lyra was not like the others. She was blind, her eyes were pale like frozen glass, and she could only see darkness. Yet somehow, she always moved as if she could sense the world around her. She could hear the soft hum of machines, smell the metal dust in the air, and feel the warmth of power cables under her bare feet. The people of the city called her the trash girl, and they laughed when they saw her digging through garbage. But Lyra never replied. She just smiled quietly and kept working. This planet had once been full of light and energy, but now it was dying. The alien rulers had drained its core for centuries to power their flying cities. Now, the lower districts were nothing but piles of metal, smoke, and forgotten people, and among them lived Lyra, the blind child who refused to give up. Every morning, she woke up when the first siren rang. She carried a broken metal stick to guide her. Her small hands moved fast, sorting through junk, finding old wires, batteries, or small scraps of metal she could trade. But what no one knew was that Lyra could feel things that others couldn't. When she touched a broken device, she could sense a soft vibration inside, a whisper of energy still alive. It was as if the machines were talking to her. Sometimes she kept small broken robots and old power cells hidden under her blanket. She would touch them gently and whisper, "Don't worry, I'll fix you." But she never really knew how. All she had was her heart, her touch, and her strange gift. One evening, when the sun disappeared behind the thick gray smoke, a loud sound echoed across the city, a giant who. Man's spaceship had landed nearby. Humans had returned to the alien planet after many years. Their scientists came to repair the city's broken energy core. Most aliens hated humans, blaming them for past wars and destruction. But one human, Dr. Ethan Cole, was different. Ethan was an engineer who cared more about helping than fighting. He noticed Lyra while walking through the lower streets. At first, he thought she was just another poor child collecting trash. But then he saw her reach for a cracked energy cell and touch it gently. Her blind eyes glowed faintly for a moment, and the small cell flickered with light. Ethan stopped in his tracks, completely shocked. "Did she just recharge that cell?" he whispered to himself. No machine should react to a touch like that, especially not from a blind child. He watched as Lyra smiled and placed the glowing cell in her small bag. She didn't even know he was there. Ethan followed her from a distance. She walked carefully through dark alleys, guided only by the humming sound of the city. When she reached the edge of the junkyard, she sat near a broken sign that once said Hope District. Now it only said Ope, with the H missing. But maybe that was fitting. There was little hope left here, except for her. Ethan approached slowly and said softly, "Hey there, are you okay?" Lyra froze, her head turning slightly toward the sound. "Who's there?" she asked in a quiet voice. "I'm Ethan, a human engineer," he said kindly. "I saw what you did with that power cell. It was amazing." She frowned, confused. "I just touched it, that's all." "Exactly," Ethan said. "You made it glow." Lyra laughed a little. "No, you're joking. I can't even see light." Ethan shook his head, amazed by her innocence. He sat down next to her and offered a small metal piece. "Can I show you something?" He handed her a broken scanner from his toolkit. "Oh." Lyra touched it. She felt a strange hum. Her eyes turned bright for a second and the scanner beeped weakly. Ethan's heart raced. He realized she wasn't blind to everything. She could see energy. From that moment, Ethan knew she wasn't just a poor alien child. She was something special, maybe the key to saving this dying city. But Lyra didn't know that yet. All she knew was that for the first time in her lonely life, someone talked to her kindly. Someone didn't call her trash. Someone saw her as a person. As the night lights of the city flickered weakly in the fog, Ethan looked at the girl and said softly, "Maybe I can help you see again." Lyra tilted her head, unsure. "No one can do that." Ethan smiled. "Maybe not yet, but I can try." And somewhere deep inside, for the first time, Lyra felt something warm. A small spark of hope. The next morning, the city was covered in gray mist and falling dust. Lyra woke up in her small metal shelter made from old machine parts and cloth. She could hear the city's engines roaring far above and smell the burnt air that always made her cough. Her world was still dark, but in her heart, she remembered the kind voice from last night, the human, Ethan. She thought maybe it was just a dream. Humans rarely came down here, and when they did, they never spoke gently. But then she felt something in her small bag, a piece of metal with smooth edges. She remembered, he gave her that broken scanner. It still made a soft beeping sound, like it was calling to her. Far above, in the human repair station, Ethan Cole couldn't stop thinking about the blind alien girl. He had seen many strange things in his life, but nothing like her. Her touch had reactivated a dead device, without power, without tools. That shouldn't be possible, yet he saw it happen. He sat in his lab staring at her small handprint still visible on the scanner's metal. "I need to understand this," he whispered. "She's special." Ethan opened his notebook filled with drawings and notes. He remembered how she said she couldn't see, but when she touched the device, her eyes glowed. It was like her mind could read energy the way humans read light. If he could build something to connect to that sense, maybe she could see again, not with normal vision, but with something deeper. For days, he worked in secret. He used scraps from damaged drones, broken neural chips, and crystal lenses from an old survey robot. His human team didn't know what he was doing. If they found out, he'd be punished. Helping an alien child wasn't part of his mission, but he didn't care. Every night he thought about her empty eyes and the soft, hopeful way she smiled in the dark. Meanwhile, Lyra continued to work in the junkyard. Sometimes she sat near the broken OPE sign and waited. She didn't know why she hoped he would come back, but she did, and one night, when the air was quiet, she heard soft footsteps behind her. "Lyra," Ethan said gently. She gasped, her small hands trembling. "You came back," he smiled. "Of course, I had to see you again." Ethan sat beside her and opened a small box. Inside was a strange pair of glasses, silver, round, and full of tiny lights. Lara tilted her head. "What is that?" "It's a gift," he said, his voice low. "Something that might help you see." Her heart skipped. "But I'm blind." Ethan nodded. "Yes, but maybe your blindness is different," he explained softly. "These glasses don't use light, they use energy. They connect to the signals in your brain, the same ones you use when you touch things and feel their power. I made them for you." Lyra didn't understand everything, but she felt his kindness like a warm flame in the cold. Ethan gently placed the glasses on her face. They felt light and warm. He pressed a small button on the side, and the lenses glowed softly. For a moment, everything was still. Then Lyra gasped. Her pale eyes widened, and she clutched Ethan's arm. I can see something," she whispered, her voice shaking. At first, it was only shapes, glowing outlines, waves of energy floating in the air. The world looked like a dream made of light, sound, and movement. She could see Ethan's outline glowing in blue light, and the ground pulsing with red heat. Tears ran down her face. "I can see you," she cried. "I can see the world." Ethan smiled, his own eyes wet. He had seen many machines come to life, but this moment felt different. It wasn't just science, it was something human, something pure. Lyra ran her fingers over his face, feeling his rough skin and kind smile. "You look like light," she whispered. He laughed softly. "That's a new one." She looked around, amazed by every flicker and shadow. Even the junk piles looked beautiful to her now, glowing with hidden colors. But then something strange happened. Through the glasses, she saw lines of bright energy deep under the ground, moving like rivers. She frowned. "Ethan, the earth is glowing." He looked at her confused. "What do you mean?" She pointed weakly. "There's something alive down there." Ethan's smile faded. He opened his scanner, but it showed nothing. "Only you can see it," he said quietly. The thought sent chills through him. If she could see energy that no machine could detect, then this planet held secrets far beyond human science. As the two stood in the cold, glowing night, the city's engines hummed in the distance. For the first time in her life, Lyra saw the stars. Even through the smoke, they looked like tiny hearts beating in the sky. She reached out her hand toward them and whispered, "Thank you." Ethan smiled and said, "No, Lyra, thank you." But deep under their feet, something ancient stirred, something that had waited for centuries in silence. And now, for the first time, it had been seen. For the first time in her life, Lyra opened her eyes and saw light. It wasn't the normal kind of light that man saw. It was something deeper, something alive. The glasses Ethan had made didn't just show shapes, they showed energy. Every wall, every pipe, every piece of metal around her was glowing with soft colors. It was as if the whole world had been sleeping, and now it was awake. Lyra stood still, afraid to breathe. Her small hands shook as she looked at the glowing shapes dancing around her. Blue lines ran through the streets like rivers. Golden sparks flickered above in the air, and when she turned to Ethan, she gasped. He shone like sunlight, his heart glowing in bright orange, his eyes surrounded by soft light. "You're beautiful," she whispered. Ethan laughed softly. "That's a first. No one has called me that before." She smiled through her tears, her voice trembling. "Everything is shining, even the trash, even the broken machines." Ethan nodded, watching her with awe. "That's because now you see energy, not just things." Lyra turned slowly, her eyes wide with wonder. Her world was no longer empty darkness, it was full of life and color. She ran a few steps, then stopped to look at her own hands. They were glowing faintly, like they were made of starlight. "Ethan," she whispered, "am I like them?" He tilted his head. "Like who?" "The machines, the lights, everything that glows," she said, touching her chest. "I can feel it inside me too." Ethan's smile faded a little. He had a feeling there was more to her than either of them understood. He opened his small scanner and pointed it at her. The screen flashed wildly, full of strange symbols and unreadable data. Her energy was stronger than any human's, stronger than any reading he had ever seen. "What are you, Lara?" he whispered softly. She looked at him with her glowing eyes. "I don't know. I'm just me." They spent the next few hours walking through the junkyard together. Lyra pointed out things Ethan couldn't see. Tiny energy threads connecting broken machines. She said some of them were still alive, just sleeping. Ethan listened carefully, his scientific mind racing with questions. How could a blind alien child see what his best instruments couldn't? And why did she say the ground beneath was glowing like a heartbeat? That's when it happened. Lyra stopped suddenly and touched the ground. Her whole body froze, her eyes turning bright white behind the glasses. She whispered, "Something's crying." Ethan knelt beside her. "What do you mean?" She pointed to the ground. "It's deep below us, it's alive, and it's hurting." Ethan looked at his scanner again. Still nothing. "There's nothing there," he said, confused. But Lyra shook her head. "No, it's there, I can feel it like a heartbeat under the city." Ethan stared at her in silence. Could it be possible that the planet's power source wasn't just a reactor, but something living? The thought chilled him. If what she said was true, then the aliens and humans might have been draining the life of a living being all this time. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Lyra, we have to be careful. No one can know about this yet." She nodded slowly, her small fingers clutching the edge of his coat. "They won't believe us, will they?" He sighed. "No, they won't." That night, they sat together on a broken rooftop. The sky above was dark and full of smoke, but through her glasses, Lyra could still see the stars glowing beyond it. They looked like tiny souls floating in the distance. She pointed up. "That one, it's brighter than the others." Ethan followed her finger, smiling. "That's Earth." Her face lit up with awe. "Your home?" "Yes," he said softly, "a place full of blue oceans and real sunlight." Lyra smiled sadly. "I wish I could see it for real." Ethan looked at her gently. "Maybe one day you will." Then the ground shook. A deep rumble echoed through the junkyard, and the metal piles began to tremble. Lyra screamed and grabbed Ethan's arm. "It's waking up," she cried. "The thing under the city." Ethan looked around as alarms began to blare in the distance. Human guards rushed out of the repair station, shouting in panic. One of them yelled, "The power core is unstable." Ethan's heart raced. He looked down at Lyra, whose glowing eyes were filled with terror. She whispered, "It's in pain, Ethan. It's alive and it's angry." He didn't know how to answer. All he could do was pull her close and say, "Hold on." As the ground cracked and the city lights flickered wildly, the human ships above roared to life, preparing for evacuation. And somewhere deep under the surface, something ancient let out a silent scream. Ethan knew their world was about to change forever. And the key to everything was a blind alien girl who could finally see. The night after the ground shook, the city fell into chaos. Sirens screamed through the air, engines roared, and bright red lights flashed from every tower. The alien rulers shouted orders through loudspeakers, telling everyone to stay calm. But deep below, nothing was calm. The planet itself was trembling, like a sleeping giant turning in pain. Ethan sat inside the human lab, staring at the readings on his monitor. The energy core under the city was going wild. Levels rising, systems failing. "This doesn't make sense," one of his coworkers muttered. "The reactor's behaving like it's alive." Ethan froze, remembering what Lyra had said. It's alive, and it's hurting. He felt a chill down his spine. Maybe she wasn't imagining anything. Maybe she had seen the truth. Meanwhile, Lyra sat in her small shelter at the edge of the junkyard. Her glasses flickered with faint light, showing strange shapes under the ground. She could see the energy pulsing like veins through the earth. It was crying again. She could feel it in her chest. Every pulse was like a heartbeat. Slow, weak, but alive. She whispered softly, "Who are you?" But there was no answer, only silence and pain. Ethan couldn't stay in the lab any longer. He sneaked out in the middle of the night, carrying his tools and data drive. If anyone found out what he was doing, he'd be arrested or worse. But he needed to know. He needed to find what was hidden under the city. He found Lyra waiting for him near the broken OPE sign. Her glowing eyes turned toward him. "You came," she said. He nodded. "We're going to find it, whatever's down there." Lyra tilted her head. "It's deep, very deep, but I can guide you." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then we'll go together." They moved through the old tunnels beneath the city. The air was thick with dust and heat, and the metal walls hummed with power. Lyra led the way, her glasses glowing brighter the deeper they went. She could see paths of energy weaving through the metal floor like glowing rivers. At one point she stopped and said quietly, "The walls are breathing." Ethan frowned, shining his flashlight. "It's just steam." But Lyra shook her head. "No, it's alive." After hours of walking, they reached a massive door made of black steel. It was ancient, covered in strange alien symbols. Ethan tried to scan it, but his device sparked and shut down. Lyra placed her hand on the door and gasped. She saw visions, flashes of light, ancient faces, screams and fire. "The city was built on top of it," she whispered. "They trapped it here." Ethan looked at her, stunned. "Trapped what?" She turned toward him, her voice trembling. "A living being. Hey, used it as a power source." Ethan's stomach twisted. The Alien Council had always called the core a machine, a perfect energy source. But what if it was alive? A creature imprisoned for centuries to power their world? He felt anger boiling inside him. "No wonder it's unstable," he muttered. "It's not breaking down, it's fighting back." Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed behind them. Guards, alien soldiers in black armor, had followed them through the tunnels. "Stop right there!" one shouted. "You are under arrest for entering a restricted zone." Ethan raised his hands. "Wait, you don't understand, this thing under the city—" But before he could finish, one guard struck him with a metal rod. He fell to the ground, blood running down his face. Lyra screamed, "Stop! He's not the enemy!" One of the guards grabbed her by the arm, but when his hand touched her skin, his body jolted with a surge of light. He was thrown backward, armor smoking. Everyone froze. Lyra's eyes glowed like fire, her voice shaking. "It's alive, and you're hurting it." The guards hesitated, fear in their eyes. Ethan coughed weakly, reaching for her hand. "Lyra, we have to go." She nodded and helped him stand. Together they ran deeper into the tunnels, chased by the echoes of shouting soldiers. When they finally stopped, they found themselves standing at the edge of a vast chamber. In the center was a glowing sphere, pulsing with light and sound. It looked like a beating heart made of crystal and fire. Lyra fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "It's the source," she whispered, "and it's dying." Ethan stared in disbelief. "We have to save it." "But how?" she asked, trembling. He looked at her, his face pale but determined. "We'll find a way." Behind them, alarms started again, the walls shaking with thunder. They could hear the guards coming closer. Lyra turned to the glowing co. Placing both hands against it, she closed her eyes, whispering softly, "We'll free you, I promise." The sphere pulsed once, brighter than before, as if it had heard her. Ethan stared in silence, knowing that from this moment on, nothing would ever be the same. He realized the truth. The city's power came from a prisoner, and the prisoner had finally awakened. The next morning, the whole city trembled with fear. The underground tunnels had collapsed in several places, and strange energy waves were spreading through the air. People whispered that the gods were angry, but the truth was far darker. The ancient being beneath the city had awakened, and its pain was shaking the planet. Lyra and Ethan had barely escaped the tunnels. Dust covered their faces, and Ethan's arm was bleeding from a deep cut. They hid inside an abandoned cargo station at the edge of the city. Lyra could still hear the voice of the creature in her mind. Soft, distant, like a song made of sorrow. "It's crying again," she whispered, clutching her head. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll help it, I promise." But his eyes showed worry, not confidence. Outside, alien soldiers searched the streets. They were hunting for the human traitor and the blind mutant girl. Posters with Ethan's face flashed on digital screens calling him a criminal. The Alien Council blamed him for the quake, saying he had damaged the city's energy system. But Ethan knew better. They were hiding something, and now he was getting too close. That night, Ethan broke into the human command center to find proof. He used his old ID card and slipped through the empty corridors. On a locked computer, he found hidden files marked Project Heartforge. His hands shook as he opened them. The files told everything. The power core was not a reactor at all. It was a living alien entity, discovered centuries ago and enslaved by both humans and aliens. It had been drained to provide endless energy, and the first experiment was led by a human commander named Admiral Crane. Ethan felt sick. He had trusted the human mission, believed they came to repair and protect, but it was all a lie. Humans had helped build the prison that trapped the living core, and now it was dying because of them. Suddenly, a cold voice spoke behind him. I see you found the truth. Ethan turned slowly, and there stood Admiral Crane himself, tall and silent in his black uniform. Ethan clenched his fists. You used me. Crane smiled faintly. Used you? No, Dr. Cole, you were just a tool, but like the rest of them. Ethan's anger boiled. You're killing a living creature. Crane stepped closer, his eyes cold. It's not a creature, it's a resource, and if we lose it, the city dies, along with us. Ethan shook his head. No, you're wrong. Crane leaned closer. And what about your little alien friend? The one who sees things no one else can? She's the real danger, Cole. Ethan's heart sank. What do you mean? Crane smirked. She's connected to the core. Her energy is linked to it. If she lives, it grows stronger. If she dies, it weakens. Ethan felt his blood run cold. You wouldn't, he whispered. Crane replied calmly. I already gave the order. Ethan lunged at him, but soldiers grabbed him from behind, slamming him to the floor. Crane looked down, his voice sharp and final. You had your chance, Doctor, but now you'll be remembered as the man who betrayed humanity. They dragged Ethan away to a cell, his shouts echoing through the metal halls. Far away, in the junkyard, Lyra suddenly woke with a scream. Her glasses flickered wildly, showing red flashes of danger. She could feel Ethan's fear, even though he was miles away. She whispered, They caught him, and clenched her fists. Tears filled her glowing eyes. I won't let them hurt him. She gathered her small bag of tools and slipped into the shadows. Using the glasses, she could see the security drones before they saw her. She moved like light through darkness, fast and silent. At one point, she stopped by a broken window and looked up. Above the city towers, she could see the human command base glowing like a red wound. Inside it, she saw something else. Lines of energy moving like blood, connecting everything back to the core. The power of the living being ran through every wall, every wire, even through her own body. When she reached the base gate, she whispered softly, Forgive me, and touched the metal. Energy burst from her hands, and the entire gate cracked open with a blinding light. Guards shouted, alarms blared, but she didn't stop. She moved through the corridors, guided by the faint sound of Ethan's heartbeat. She finally found him inside a cold steel room, chained and weak. Lyra, he whispered, eyes wide with shock. How did you— No time, she said, breaking his chains with a single touch. We have to go. As they ran through the base, explosions echoed behind them. Lyra's power was growing, the core responding to her anger and fear. Ethan shouted over the noise. They know what you are now, Lyra. They'll never stop chasing you. She looked at him, her voice firm. Then let them try. They escaped into the night, the city burning around them. From the skies, human ships began to descend, preparing for war. The alien council blamed humans for the collapse. Humans blamed the aliens for betrayal. And in the middle of it all stood a blind girl with glowing eyes. A child connected to something ancient and alive. She looked up at the storming sky and whispered, I will save it, even if they call me a monster. The city of Kareth was burning. Smoke rose into the red sky as explosions echoed through the metal towers. Alarms screamed for. On both alien and human bases, each blaming the other for the disaster. But the truth was deeper, buried beneath them. In the heart of the dying planet, a living being was waking up, and its heartbeat shook the world. Lyra and Ethan ran through the shattered streets, their faces lit by the glow of distant fires. Drones circled above, searching for them, their red eyes cutting through the smoke. Lyra could feel the presence of the creature beneath her feet. It pulsed with sadness, fear, and anger. It whispered inside her head, a voice like a song made of thunder. Free me, or we will all fall. Ethan stumbled, his leg wounded from a bullet scrape. She grabbed his arm, pulling him behind a broken wall. You need to rest, she said, her glowing eyes filled with worry. He shook his head. No, we have to keep moving. The council will seal the tunnel soon. Lyra looked down at her hands. They were shining brighter than before. The connection between her and the core was growing stronger. Sometimes she could even feel its heartbeat inside her chest. They moved through the ruins until they reached an old elevator shaft that led deep underground. Ethan forced open the doors with a wrench. Are you sure about this? He asked. Lyra nodded. It's calling to me. It wants to be free. They climbed down the dark tunnel, the sound of sirens fading above them. The deeper they went, the warmer the air became. Streams of blue energy ran through the walls like glowing rivers. The whole planet felt alive. But in pain, at the bottom of the shaft, they entered a massive chamber filled with broken machines and cracked crystals. The air hummed like 1,000 whispers, and in the center of the room, surrounded by golden chains of light, floated the heart of Kareth. It looked like a sphere of living fire, beating slowly, its surface glowing with alien symbols. Lyra took a step forward, turns her, ears filling her eyes. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Ethan's voice was soft and dying. Suddenly, voices echoed through the tunnels behind them. "Stop! Don't move!" A squad of human soldiers appeared, their guns aimed at Ethan and Lyra. At the front stood Admiral Crane, his face hard and cold. "Step away from the core, Doctor," he ordered. "You've done enough damage." Ethan raised his hands. "You're killing it, Crane, can't you see? It's alive." Crane laughed bitterly. "It's a power source, nothing more, and we'll control it, even if we have to burn the planet." Lyra stepped forward, her voice trembling but strong. "You can't control life," she said. "You can only destroy it," Crane sneered. "Then maybe we'll start with you, little mutant." He pointed his gun at her, but before he could shoot, the floor cracked open with a deafening roar. A wave of pure light surged from the core, throwing everyone to the ground. Lyra felt the energy flooding into her body. She screamed, her voice echoing like thunder, her eyes glowing bright white. Ethan crawled toward her, shouting her name, but she was surrounded by swirling light. The core's voice filled her mind again. "You can end the pain. If you join with me," she hesitated, trembling. "If I do, will you stop?" "I will live, but I will change everything," the voice answered. Ethan reached her and grabbed her hand. "Lyra, don't do this. You don't know what will happen." Tears streamed down her glowing face. "I have to, Ethan. I can feel its pain. It's dying because of us." He shook his head. There must be another way. But before he could say more, a blast hit the ground near them. Crane had fired again, shouting, "Stop her! She's merging with it!" The chamber shook violently. Metal collapsed, sparks rained from the ceiling, and molten energy poured from the cracks. Lyra turned toward Crane, her voice calm but filled with power. "You can't stop life," she said. Her eyes blazed, and a wave of light burst from her body, throwing Crane and his soldiers back into the walls. The chains around the core shattered, and the entire chamber filled with light. Ethan shielded his eyes as everything around them glowed like a newborn sun. When the light faded, Lyra stood in front of the core, floating in midair. Her body shimmered with energy, her voice echoing softly. "It's free now," she said, "but so am I." Ethan reached out, tears in his eyes. "Lyra, come back." She smiled sadly. "I can't, not yet." The light around her grew brighter, spreading through the tunnels. The city above trembled as the old power system shut down, replaced by a warm, living glow. Ethan fell to his knees, watching as she slowly vanished into the light. The walls stopped shaking, the explosions faded, and silence filled the air. He whispered her name again. "Lyra." And deep within the light, her voice answered softly, "I'm still here." When the light faded, silence fell across the broken world. The city that once roared with machines now stood still, covered in a golden haze. Smoke drifted through the quiet air, and the red sun slowly rose behind the shattered towers. For a moment, it looked like the planet was breathing again, slow, calm, alive. Ethan Cole opened his eyes, lying on the cold metal floor of the ruined chamber. His ears rang and his body ached, but he was alive. The last thing he remembered was Lyra, floating in the light, smiling at him before she vanished. He pushed himself up, coughing softly. Around him, the walls were glowing with soft blue light. The chains that once bound the core were gone. The giant sphere was no longer trapped. It was gone too. In its place was a calm pool of living energy, shining like water made of stars. Ethan stood quietly, staring at the pool. He whispered, "You did it, Lyra," his voice trembling. The air around him hummed with warmth, and he could almost hear that ears. Her laughter, then a soft wind passed through the chamber, and a familiar voice echoed, "I told you I could see." Ethan froze, his heart pounding. He turned around, and there she was, standing in the light. Lyra looked different now. Her eyes were glowing like twin suns, her skin soft and radiant. She wore no glasses anymore. She didn't need them. The energy of the core flowed through her like gentle fire. Ethan took a step forward, speechless. "Lyra," he whispered, "you're alive." She smiled softly. "Not the same as before, but yes, I'm here." He wanted to run to her, but he could feel the power around her. Strong and endless. "What happened?" he asked, his voice shaking. She looked up toward the ceiling, where sunlight was beginning to pour through the cracks. "I became part of it," she said quietly. The being wasn't just energy, it was a mind, a soul, and it needed someone to understand it. Her eyes softened. "Now I can hear it. I can feel the planet itself, Ethan. It's alive again." He smiled through his tears. "You saved it." She shook her head gently. "We saved it." Outside, the city began to change. The thick smoke that once filled the air started to fade. The ground that had been gray and dead now shimmered with green. Tiny plants began to grow through the cracks of the metal streets, and the sky, once covered in ash, turned blue for the first time in centuries. The aliens came out of their shelters, confused and afraid. The humans stepped out from their bunkers, weapons still in hand, but instead of fighting, they stopped to stare. Above them, the floating towers of Kareth glowed with golden light, powered not by machines, but by something natural and pure. The planet itself was breathing life into the city. The war was over before it could even begin. Ethan stood with Lyra at the edge of the ruins, watching the dawn rise. He looked at her and said softly, "They'll come looking for you, both humans and aliens." Lyra smiled sadly. "They already are, but they won't find me." He frowned. "What do you mean?" She stepped closer, her light reflecting in his eyes. "I belong here now," she said, "with the planet, with the energy that keeps it alive." He shook his head. "No, Lyra, you're just a child." She smiled. "Maybe I was, but now I'm something else." For a long moment, they stood together in silence. The wind blew gently through the valley, carrying the scent of clean air and new life. Ethan placed a hand over his heart. "Will I ever see you again?" Lyra looked toward the horizon. "Look up at the stars. You'll find me there." He smiled faintly. "That sounds like something you'd say." She laughed softly, the sound echoing like music. Then her body began to fade into light. The last thing he saw was her glowing eyes, warm and full of kindness. "Goodbye, Ethan," she whispered, "and thank you for helping me see." The light faded completely, leaving Ethan alone in the dawn. He stood for a long time, looking at the rising sun. Around him, the world was being reborn. The sky blue, the wind gentle, the ground alive. He knew that somewhere, in the flow of energy around him, she was still there, watching, guiding, living through the planet she had saved. Years later, the city of Kareth became a place of peace. Humans and aliens lived side by side, building new homes powered by natural energy, and in the center of the city stood a statue, a small blind girl holding a pair of shining glasses. The plaque beneath read, "She showed us how to see." Every night when the stars came out, people said one of them shone brighter than the rest. They called it the Eye of Lyra. Ethan would often look up at it and whisper, "She's still watching." And somewhere among the stars, a soft voice would answer, "I always am."